What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 1, Episode 3, Omashu. So some of the changes in this do work in a sense because you're dealing with, you only have 8 episodes for what was originally, I believe, I want to say like 16 episodes, possibly, maybe more, maybe up to 20 actually, now I'm thinking about it. But obviously they had a lot more episodes, so a lot more stories to tell. They're not going to tell all of the stories because some of them were very side story-esque. Obviously, they're not going to tell the Great Divide story because everybody hates that one. But I think they're trying to get a lot of these main characters in there. And so you are going to combine some stories together. However, some stories make sense to combine together and some do not. In this case, the fact that they're in Omashu and Jet's group being in Omashu, that could work. You've got Fire Nation attacks on the city, but it turns out it's actually Jet's group that are doing it to kind of raise the panic a little bit and try to use this to their advantage. It kind of makes sense that they could be put into any city, and so them being in Omashu, it works. However, Sai and Teo being in Omashu doesn't work. I know they've tried to make it now where Sai is the one doing all the inventions. He's the one that invented the delivery system, which I don't really like that, to be honest, because I liked it better when Bumi was the one involved in all that. And even seeing Sokka and Katara jump into one of the things, it's like, okay, so now that's not something that Aang told them about that he and Bumi did. At least, I don't think he did. If he said that early on in the episode, I missed it. But I'm pretty sure they didn't talk about that. So I feel like that's one change that I'm kind of about. But the other thing is, why did he build his son a glider for his wheelchair? When they were at the air temple, it made sense because there were a bunch of air nomad relics around and they saw the stuff and they thought about how cool would it be to fly, and so they invented things that would let them fly. Now they're in an Earth Kingdom city. Why did his son suddenly like, hey, I want to fly like the airbenders did? Like, what? It doesn't make nearly as much sense to me. And on top of that, why is he working on airbending stuff like the hot air balloon that eventually will be used? Like, taking them out of an air temple feels like it doesn't make sense. I feel like it would have been a better change if you had them, maybe they were staying at the Southern Air Temple. I know that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, and it would take away the impact of seeing Gyatso's bones still there. But you could have it where maybe they built a monument to him because they knew he died, like people who found the air temple and who took up residence there. Like, you could make that one work a bit better and still have a lot of the stuff with Teo and Sai remain the same. Putting them in an Earth Kingdom, it doesn't work. And unless I missed the throwaway line where they were like, oh yeah, we were at an air temple, but now we're here, there's no reason why they would be so interested in airbending inventions and stuff like that. So that was definitely a change that, in my opinion, did not make a whole lot of sense. But Jet's group, I mean, you could put them anywhere and the story is still the same. They are the rebels that make the rebels look bad. You know, and I think it's a good way to show. It's something that the original show did very well. A good way to show that not everybody on the good side is good. And then, of course, later on we see not everybody on the bad side is bad. So it always sets up for that really cool twist where you see that the Fire Nation inherently is not evil. It's just the guy ruling it right now is. And so it builds toward we all can live together peacefully once we get the evil people out of power. So I do like that. Some of it is, unfortunately, if you're coming in with prior knowledge of the show, you're not going to be too surprised, and a lot of these reveals are set up to be more of a surprise. I do also kind of dislike the fact that Katara is the only one that really got to meet and talk with Jet. I think it does lead to, whenever he comes back later on, because I'm assuming they will continue his story, when he does come back, I don't think it's going to have the same impact. I mean, for Katara, it still will, because there's that possible romantic connection there that they shared. But for Sokka and Aang, I mean, they hardly even got to know him. So whenever he shows back up, it's not like they're going to be like, hey, it's Jet. Or at least they shouldn't. Katara would probably recognize him, but they hardly saw his face for the most part. So I don't know. I feel like Jet's story is one that it does deserve a bit more time than what they gave it in this episode. And I feel like if you just take Teo and Sai out of the picture and make it more so focused on trying to find out what's happening in this city, you've still got Zuko and Iroh showing up. So I'm assuming this is going to lead to Zuko, going to save him, like what happened in the original story. But as far as like Zuko and Iroh finding Aang and Omashu, I'm like, okay, I don't know where they're borrowing this story from, because it does feel like they are borrowing stories from the original and putting them in the show. It's just a matter of when are those stories going to show up and where. But this one doesn't feel familiar to me at all. Like them finding him in a city and then trying to take him down without using firebending because they don't want to be outed as firebenders. That doesn't feel familiar, but it does lead to a pretty fun fight, in my opinion. All of the using your surroundings to your advantage and all of that, and grabbing baskets and bowls and stuff and running through the clothes. Anytime a fight scene can do that, I always find it a lot of fun, and I think they did a pretty good job with it. The slow-mo maybe gets a little overused at times, but it does also kind of let you appreciate some of the technique that's going on too. So I think overall it was a fun time. And like I said, I do think Jet's story is one that it works being here. And while I do think the story in the original was a bit more impactful, especially considering it does seem like he kind of gets away with it at first before you realize that Sokka kind of stepped in and saved the day. But at the same time, I mean, this one, it still makes sense what they're trying to do. It still makes sense that they see him as a traitor. They see Sai as a traitor because he's talking to a firebender. I am curious to see what that story is about, though, because we didn't really get any answers on that. So is the firebender, is he actually a good guy? Is he a spy that Sai is trying to out as a spy? Is maybe this is a firebender that is just trying to help a mechanist and doesn't really know anything about what he's doing? I don't know. There's a lot of different theories that have been running around in my head, but I do think Jet's story does fit in this scenario. Even though I don't think Sai and Teo should be in the city, I think how they set this up, it makes sense for what Jet's trying to do. And then finally, we do see our main villains. I don't hate it, but there is something kind of disappointing that they are already playing their, here's the Fire Lord, here's Azula, here's Mai and Ty Lee. I get it. They're introducing them for later, so maybe we don't have to spend as much time building up backstory in season 2 when those three get introduced, and then season 3 when we finally see. I don't know. There's something though very intriguing to me whenever you have villains that you don't see and they're talked about and they're mentioned. The Emperor, for example, from Star Wars, you don't actually see him, but you hear about him. Same thing for the Fire Lord. You don't see him until the 3rd season. You hear about what he's done. You hear about all the things that have happened under his rule, and it kind of builds up for what an intimidating villain he is, which of course is hilarious whenever you see him and he just looks kind of normal. Like there's something to be said about saving that thing. You can have him cast, you can have him shot from behind, shot from a distance so he can't really get a good glimpse of him, but to just show him close up, I always feel like that takes a lot of the intrigue and the mystery surrounding these characters, these evil, menacing overlords that I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe other people are like, oh, cool, we get to see him already. For me, I personally wish they would have waited until the final season. And then as far as Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee, and for one, the fact that they're already together is a little weird because, I mean, in the original show, it was kind of interesting to see Azula go and force Ty Lee to come join her, and then Mai kind of joined her out of just I'm happy to get out of my boring life. So to see that they're already just sort of hanging out, I don't know what that's going to lead to. I think the casting on them, as far as acting, is fine. I will admit, though, where everybody else has kind of looks similar enough to their characters from the animated show, I think Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee, for me, are the most off from their original designs in the animated show. And I don't really know why. I don't know what it is. Because, I mean, Iroh doesn't look exactly like the show, but he still has similar features about him. He still looks pretty close. Something about the three of Azula, Mai, and Ty Lee, something about them just... I look at them and I know, I see how they're dressed, I see how their hair is done up, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I see that. But in the face, for some reason, I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but I look at them and I don't see Azula, May, and Ty Lee. I don't know if that's just me, though. I don't know if everybody else is like, oh, they were cast perfectly. Because I look at everybody else and I think those were all cast. I mean, Sokka and Katara look really good. Aang looks good. Zuko and Iroh look good. The Fire Lord looks good. The Cabbage Merchant looks perfect. I'm pretty sure it's the same guy voicing him too. So that's really funny to me that they got him to be back as a cabbage merchant. And he had the epic "My Cabbages" line that they were just building up to this. That was easily the best story of this episode, by the way. I know I forgot to mention up until now, but that was the one that I was just waiting. I was waiting for him to say "My Cabbages," and when it finally did, it was such a release. It was, yes, so good. But that's a hard story to mess up anyway. So I feel like the writers had it basically put in front of them, and they were just like, I mean, this is a perfect story. We can't change it, so let's just do what they did in the original. Anyways, like I said, I might be the only one that feels like they don't look like their animated counterparts. If I'm not, then please tell me. But yeah, everybody else has looked pretty spot on and obviously sounded pretty spot on. The three of them they just don't look right to me. The acting's fine. I mean, all three of them, they sound pretty close. Azula's actress has definitely got that sadistic feel about her, so I don't have a problem with all that. It's just the look of it. But yeah, I think that's about it for this one, though. Obviously, having the episode end with Aang being captured, I assume this means we're going to meet the King of Omashu in the next one, King Bumi. So I realize that might be a spoiler if you're watching this and for some reason you haven't seen either the animated show or this show. But I feel like most people that are watching this have had the animated show in their brains, more than likely. With that being said, let's get to the next episode. I'll see you there. And now episode 4, Into the Dark. This might be the weakest episode for me so far this season, and a lot of it is, unfortunately, the changes they made in this one just do not make much sense. And here's the thing, I don't want to sit here, because I know a lot of people make it seem like, oh, he's just saying they're making changes, so it's not good. That's not the problem. In fact, there are a couple changes in this episode that I really liked. I liked the scene between Aang and Iroh in the prison. I liked their back and forth there. And the best scene so far this season was a scene that wasn't in the original show, where we see Iroh at his son's funeral and the words that Zuko says to him, the instrumental of Leaves from a Vine playing in the background. I mean, it was beautiful. I nearly broke during that scene. So it's not the changes that bug me. It's the changes that don't make sense that bug me. For instance, like Sokka not having a character arc, like Aang seemingly not having much of a character arc. Those changes bother me. And this one, we're doing the Tale of the Two Lovers, the Cave of the Two Lovers. We're doing that story now. Not only was that a season 2 story in the original show, but also, first of all, you've got Aang and Katara kind of building that romance, which, are they just not doing that now? Is that what's going on? Are we just throwing that to the side? Because so many of the fans are like, oh, I just hated that. That was the weirdest romance in the world. It's part of the show. And it shows Aang's growth as well, because, yeah, she kind of sees him as sort of a little brother at first, but she sees him grow. She kind of falls in love with him because of it, and they do have a good connection. I mean, it may not be everybody's cup of tea. Again, I do think Sokka and Suki are a better couple, but Aang and Katara still work when you look at it. Are we just not doing that now? Also, you've got the introduction of the Badger Moles. That was something that set up perfectly for Toph. Because the thing is, we didn't know that the Badger Moles were blind. So whenever we meet the Badger Moles, and then we meet Toph, and then she explains how she was raised by Badger Moles and she learned how to earthbend from them, it was kind of a cool connection. Now, we're seeing them in halfway through the first season before we're even close to meeting Toph. How does that make sense? It doesn't. It's so weird to have this story now, out of nowhere, and have it be Katara and Sokka together in the tunnels, and I guess it's more of a familial love kind of thing, because they are bickering, and by the end of it, they do make up and have that moment of, I'm so sorry for everything that's happened. You know, they have that nice sibling connection there. It's just weird. Weird that they decided to do that. And then the change to Bumi, in my opinion, I don't like Bumi in this show because of that. Because of this change. Because Bumi in the original show, yeah, maybe works better for a kid's show, and this show is a bit more for adults. But I still feel like you really do a detriment to Bumi's character by making him this bitter old man who kind of lost his mind to the point of now he's kind of vindictive for Aang leaving. That doesn't make him more interesting. That makes him less interesting. I thought it was going to be some cool thing where we already know it's Bumi right off the bat. So I'm like, okay, so they're not doing that twist. And then as they're going along and he's acting like he's bitter, like he's mad at Aang for him leaving, and he's trying to make him suffer and show him why what he did was awful and all that. I'm just like, okay, there's going to be a twist here, right? Because this is not Bumi. This is not Bumi at all. Like, this is going to be, at the end of it, he's trying to show Aang, this is what people think of you. This is what some people are going to think of you, and you have to be prepared to deal with. I thought that's where this was all headed. So at the end of it, whenever he's just basically telling Aang to kill him, and then after it all, he just gets mad at him for not killing him or dying himself, and it takes Aang giving him the little whistle that he made for him to kind of be like, oh, maybe there is hope for this world now. That's not Bumi. Because are we not doing the Order of the White Lotus either? Because if we are, he's a part of that. And that's a group that has been around for a while. And it's a group that's supposed to kind of have some semblance of what's going on in the world and try to keep things in balance from behind the scenes type of thing. So if he's no longer a part, or if he is a part of that, then all of his actions here make no sense. If we're not doing that anymore, well then that's one of the best parts of the original show just out. So for me, making that change, I think you could have changed him a little bit, because obviously he is very goofy for the sake of it's more kid-friendly show, the original. But I feel like you could do sort of the crazy old mentor and have him, I mean, again, it would have been kind of interesting to see him be this vindictive and actually wonder, wow, is he actually mad at Aang? To find out, no, this was all part of him showing what some of the people out there are going to be like. You know, because we didn't have the Storm episode where there was the old fisherman that kind of hated Aang for what he did. So this could have kind of been a cool tie-in to show there are people out there that think like this. You have to be prepared to deal with that type of hatred, that type of vindictiveness. Is that a word? I feel like there's a word for vindictive in that sense that I'm not thinking of at the moment. But it would have made more sense because it still would have fit who Bumi is supposed to be, and yet also still had that moment of, hey, Aang, people out there, some of them are pissed that you didn't come back, that you just left. But as it is, they just, again, made Bumi some vindictive old man, and I don't like that change. It makes him less interesting. It makes him more, I don't know, simple-minded, almost. Like, for him to just get mad because, oh, well, Aang left. No, the one in the original show was so much better for that reason. Because he wasn't mad that Aang left. Sure, he was kind of crazy, but you still kind of felt like there, underneath all the craziness, underneath all the senile part of him, there was a brain working there. You know, when he lets Omashu be captured by the Fire Nation, you kind of have to go, what the hell are you doing? But in reality, he's waiting for the right moment. He is waiting for the moment to counterattack. And it's not until the day of the solar eclipse that he finally sees the moment to get all the people out of there, all the Fire Nation out of there. But until that point, he realized, well, if we try to fight back now, there's just going to be a ton of innocent lives lost, so I surrender. You guys can have this place. It seems crazy, but in his mind, it makes the most sense because it keeps the most amount of his people safe in the meantime. That's kind of how he worked. This is like, oh, I had to make a bunch of tough decisions, and so now I'm crazy, and I'm mad at the world, and I think everything should end, and I just want to die. Okay, that is so interesting, the way you just wrote this very simplistic character who is just crazy and kind of gave up on the world. How? I just don't understand that. That's such a departure from his original character, and it kind of pisses me off a little bit that they couldn't find a way to take a character like Bumi and still keep him the same while maybe adding some more elements that does adultify this show a little bit more. I'm frustrated with that. Outside of that, the rest of it was okay. I mean, the stuff with Zuko saving Iroh, most of that was pretty much the same. You know, we do find out about one of the guards having lost a brother. I don't know if that's something that was in the original. Like, I remember him being captured. I don't remember all the details of that now. So I don't know if this was a story that they borrowed, but I do like how it ties into what Iroh went through, you know, with his own son, because guy accusing him of not knowing loss is just, everybody who knows the show is like, oh no, you're very wrong about that. It shows how Iroh's past haunts him, and you could see it in his eyes where he truly does regret everything he's done. I think it was a great moment there. Even the moment at the end where we see when they first depart on the boat, that moment where, yeah, they have that great connection as uncle and nephew. It's basically a father-son relationship, and showing why Zuko means so much to him, because obviously we know why Iroh means so much to Zuko, where his father didn't give him proper attention and show any pride in him. Basically, Iroh is essentially the father that actually was there for him and did take care of him and all of that. But to see why Iroh sees Zuko as basically a surrogate son, I think that was a really nice touch. And again, the scene itself was beautiful, just to show that it's not the changes being made, because there are changes that are working. It's the ones that don't work that really do stick out, because you're doing it so differently from the original show, and it's also making these characters seem weaker. It's changing stories that don't make sense, that are breaking connections that worked so well before. So you're going to have a good explanation as to why we're making these changes. And off the top of my head, I can't really think of how a lot of this can work, but we'll see. That was kind of it for this episode. You got those 3 stories going on. We did also have the basically shot for shot recreation of Katara taking down Jet by splashing some water on him and then freezing him. It's funny how they'll make some really big changes, but then they'll have these references to the original show that just sort of come out of nowhere. Like the grandmother basically doing the intro for the original show. You have Aang running into the statue on Kyoshi Island, just like the original show. There's just these moments where all of like these changes are happening around the story, and all these things are happening so differently. And then all of a sudden there's just this moment, the "my cabbages" line at the end, where they're going down and run into it, exactly like the show, out of nowhere. Almost to remind us, hey, by the way, we saw the original show and we liked it a lot. Here's a scene to prove that we saw it, because we're doing it exactly like the original. I don't know if they think that gives them credibility or not, but some of them are definitely distracting. The grandmother one for sure, basically giving us the intro sequence, because that one was just so out of nowhere and kind of expository. But there are a couple. The Katara one for sure, it just felt kind of like as soon as she splashed him with water, I'm like, oh, is she about to freeze him? And then she does. And I'm just like, you guys realize how exactly the same this seems. Couldn't we do it a little differently? I don't know. Just because they are taking some creative liberties, I think. That's when it gets weird, whenever they do something exactly the same, in my opinion. So it's a really weird balance, I know, because yeah, I'm complaining when they're changing things. I'm not complaining when they're changing things, but then I'm complaining whenever they're keeping things exactly the same. I want that variation. I want the change to be there to make it a good adaptation. I just need the changes to not kind of betray what the original was about, I guess, is what I'm trying to hope for here. Because the thing is, I mean, we don't really want the characters to change that much. The characters are fine. I mean, honestly, if we continue to see the show how it is, and we get to see more of what happened maybe in the past, some of the stuff with the monks, some of the stuff with the Fire Nation, some of the stuff with Iroh, a lot of this stuff, I mean, even we could see more with Katara and Sokka's water tribe even, and see some of the people being taken, their mother and father and their relationship and all. We could see a lot of that stuff. And I feel like that would kind of add on to the story that we already know from the original. But we don't really need these characters to vastly change. And again, in my opinion, the Boomy change makes him seem like a totally different character. I was not a fan of that. So that's probably the only thing that really, really pissed me off in this episode. Everything else was just kind of weird. And then stuff with Zuko and Iroh I thought was really well done. So take from that what you will. I'm still excited to see where the rest of the season goes. Yeah, now I'm a little bit more worried based on the Boomy change. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. That's the weirdest change or the worst change that they made this season. But with all that being said, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree or disagree with me? What are your thoughts on these 2 episodes? Let me know all that down in the comment section below. Talk about, discuss, all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Avatar The Last Airbender reviews. Also, check out the channel. We have a lot of reviews on there, as well as a couple Let's Plays, so check those out when you have a chance. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. I'll talk to you all later. Peace out.